Sir, knowledge in the MATLAB and machine learning. Sir, it's over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Let me present my screen.
Yes, sir. 1 minute, sir. You can share, sir.
Yes, I'm sharing it right away. I hope it is visible on the screen, my presentation or PPT.
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay. So again, a very good afternoon to everybody. We already had a discussion about the advanced optimization. Actually, as far as the specific sequence is concerned, we need to talk about machine learning first, and then we may shift on to the advanced optimization. But depending upon the structure and the overall session planning, we already had a discussion about the advanced optimization. And now we'd like to talk about machine learning. Now I have purposefully added SPSS over here, which is the software of IBM, Statistical Package for Social Sciences, while solving some problems, by, especially in terms of artificial neural network or machine learning. Sometimes some softwares used to have a specific advantage and other may have a separate set of advantage. So today I will give you a demonstration based on MATLAB as well as SPSS. Looking at the diversified domain, looking at the overall application domain related to machine learning, it may be difficult even for us to cover each and every single thing related to machine learning in a single lecture. So today, I'm going to focus on the function approximation based artificial neural network, which is extremely important prevalent scenario for the researchers, especially for the researchers, those who are dealing with the experimentation process on the shop floor, or maybe even a hypothetical experimentation. And then they would like to validate their research problem, or would like to have a specific relationship between input as well as output. So that is the basic purpose behind the function approximation. So obviously, in this particular lecture, we'll talk about the basics of the artificial neuron and how the structure of artificial neuron could be transformed into the artificial neuron and the structure of artificial neuron, some mathematical calculation associated with this, such as the linear network, what is perceptron is, what is sigmoidal network, etc., etc. And then we'll talk about specific application. So the function approximation method, which I'm going to present over here under the tab or maybe a broader heading of machine learning, will be a supervised training or supervised learning. So I will explain each and every single aspects related to machine learning. Fortunately, now I have enough time frame to discuss everything in length. And even during a presentation, if there is any doubt, if you have any problem, if you don't understand anything, please feel free to ask me. Okay, I will answer all the questions associated with this. This slide, which we already had a discussion about it. So practically, even if we talk about the machine learning, so whether it is a long spreadsheets or extremely populated spreadsheets, which is a part of the experimentation process. To quote a very simple example, just imagine or just think about the power stations which we have. And those power stations used to have a control console panels. And those control console panel usually get the information from the different sensors. And sensors are usually time tuned. So after a specific time frame or time period, sensors used to send the data. Now data related to the inputs and then a specific output also. So altogether, if I consider the power plant, so there may be more than 200 or 300 points wherein sensors need to be deployed. So if I'm putting up 300 sensors in the entire power plant and in the time frame to pump the data on a lower side, maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes, just imagine in a day the data set which power plant system or the person who is handling it need to handle. So obviously, whenever we are pumping data, even from the sensors, it must be a digits and maybe some signal, maybe some specific digits associated with that particular sensor. My main specific emphasis is once you have a tons of data available with you, maybe in terms of spreadsheets, maybe in terms of images, maybe in terms of videos, it is extremely important to put it into some meaningful fashion or meaningful information. One best way to deal with this is creation of a mathematical model. Please mute your mic if somebody is having, there are certain disturbances. So either you can put it into a mathematical equation, or so mathematical equation may be a representation of the relationship between output as well as input, or in other words, must be called as independent variable and dependent variable. So obviously, this is a challenge before industries to handle this much data. Now, once you have huge data sets, next important scenario is how somebody is going to process that particular data set, because data is always just consist with a specific noise. The noise is inducing, noise means errors of different things. It may be a tabulation error, it may be a wrong entry, or it may be altogether different recording. There may be a problem with the instrumentation, there may be a problem with the calibration process of instrument, etc., etc. So all this noise is actually a part of your actual data sets. Now, when we create a mathematical model or machine learning model, those noise used to hamper the overall results associated with the machine learning. So practically pre-processing and post-processing data is a preamble to deal with any modeling process, mathematical modeling and simulation in a broader sense I'm talking about. And statistics and fundamentals of statistical rules and regulations used to play an extremely important role during the interpretation of those models. So that's why we talk about or would like to pose a challenge associated with the huge data sets which industry would like to handle. The very simple answer to it is put it into a mathematical equation, train the model like multiple regression analysis or non-linear regression, or maybe artificial neural network based function approximation or classifier problem in artificial neural network, etc., etc. Just train it and put results in graphical format into some meaningful information. So then it may be possible for even decision makers to take appropriate and proper decisions based on the data. So today we would like to talk about this process, wherein I will most probably have 3-4 different case studies associated with PhDs, wherein huge data sets will be there and we will handle that data set by converting it into a specific mathematical model. So if we talk about the overall cycle of the machine learning aspects, the overall cycle does consist with getting data. So there may be different sources, as we have yesterday also we had a discussion about it. It may be images, text, audio, spreadsheets, file, web data, video files, etc., etc. So next step, once you get the corresponding data sets or information, next step will be cleaning up that particular data. So as I rightly said, the data actually does consist in the induced noise into the system. So if you have an induced noise into the system or into the data, before going for modeling, before training the model or before training the neural network, it is extremely important to clean that data. So that is basically what called as pre-processing of a data, called as data cleaning. For example, if you have outliers into your data set, then maybe identification of outlier and removal of that outlier or taking proper decision associated with outlier is extremely important. And then data specific processing may be there. As I rightly said, in spreadsheet, you can correctly identify the outliers. But if you have a signals or if you have a images, it is next to impossible to identify the outliers. So suppose images are blurred, it is not with the proper resolution. It is quite difficult for anybody to process that particular image even with deep learning or even with the machine learning fundamentals. So all these are the important preambles associated for or related to the mathematical modeling as well as machine learning. So in a broader sense, if you really would like to define the machine learning, the simple basic equation for a machine learning or universal equation for the machine learning is y equals to mx plus c. Your simple straight line equation, wherein it is possible for anybody to predict y based on the set of input, and it must be with a specific intercept also. So there may be a specific coefficient which is associated with any mathematical equation, and that coefficient have a capability of a predictability. So that is, in a broader sense, the basic machine learning fundamental, y equals to mx plus c. And all other things are actually associated or related to this basic machine learning equation. So if we really would like to compare the machine learning program or machine learning approach with your traditional standard approach. So in a traditional standard approach, what we usually do, we used to generate the application, generate computer program and deploy it. Okay. So in case of a machine learning, what we usually do is the complete data sets or information, we used to train the model and again deploy it. So practically in case of machine learning, we usually have a specific relationship or would like to establish specific relationship between input and output. In other words, the same must be called as underlying relationship between output and input. Or let me put one more tagline to it. If we really would like to predict output based on the set of input, that is quite possible by using machine learning. So even if we consider the broader context of predictive analytics, so predictive analytics is also a part of machine learning. So in a broader sense, we would like to talk about each and every single segment or option related to the function approximation based machine learning. So under which circumstances we need to consider the machine learning or maybe called as a deep learning? It need to be considered when the problem is too complex or it is quite difficult for us to solve the problem in a simple and easy way. Okay. When it needs to adopt the corresponding changes or changing data will be there, and accordingly we need to provide the specific reason. For example, when the problem this action potential excites and ultimately transfer information to the next neuron. And this way information could be transferred from one neuron to next neuron and accordingly decision could be performed. So this particular process of transferring information from surrounding through these dendrites or synapses to the center, and center can process it in a non-linear way by using a transfer function, and accordingly output could be then transfer to the next neuron. This biological phenomena would like to put into the artificial neural network. But before that, let me put it in a very simple, I really would like to have a simple narrative for everybody over here. As you have already, somebody have already discussed about the experimentation process, have already talked about the uh, design of experiments, etc., etc. So in a broader sense, for a machine learning, whether it is a linear modeling or maybe a non-linear modeling, what we usually have is it usually governed by this equation y equals to a function of x1, sorry, x2, please bear with the aesthetics, up to xn. So this may be a simple universal equation, mathematical model equation for any type of data which you would like to fit in the research world. So this y is called as dependent variable, means output, and this x1 up to xn is actually called as independent variable or input. Independent variable or input. Now, what we usually do is we like to establish a relationship between this input and output to prove your research hypothesis. Now, this relationship could be usually explained by this function. So this function have two different terminologies. One is called as linear one and next one is called as non-linear one. So if I'm going to have a multiple regression model for fitting a specific relationship between set of input and set of output, then that must be called as a linear modeling. On the contrary, if we'll talk about fitting a function approximation based neural network model to establish a relationship between output as well as input, that is actually called as a non-linear model. I hope it is clear to everybody. Now, when we have this mathematical equation, or maybe called as a universal mathematical equation, the most important question which somebody or need to tackle in the researcher's mind is which output and which input. So obviously, depending upon the research problem, you need to have a set of input and set of output available with you. So what are the different sources, even before writing research paper, research thesis, research hypothesis, or PhD topic, etc., etc. We usually go for the rigorous literature survey, right? So while going through the literature survey, it may be possible for me to identify similar type of problem which I would like to solve from the research papers. So first source is research paper through which from the literature survey, and it is possible for me to, for example, somebody already have done analysis of a production system and fit a model, linear as well as non-linear model, by using multiple regression analysis and neural network. So that research paper could be your, maybe it is possible for researcher to use it as a sample or maybe use it as a reference. So based on this, it is possible for you to identify a set of input or maybe a scientific periodicals. There are regular scientific periodicals available with the top notch agencies, and based on those scientific periodicals, if it is possible for the researchers to locate or maybe identify the similar type of case study, then that may be another source from the literature. Or you usually have a scientific repositories. For example, NASA have a scientific repository, or some university used to have a scientific repository. There are multiple scientific repositories available in the world. So in those scientific repositories, if similar type of terminologies or case studies are available, then somebody can take that one also as a reference. Now, when we take that as a reference, then it is possible for you to identify the set of input associated with your case study or associated with your research problem. And then last one is actually based on the industry. You must be onto the industry shop floor. It may be possible for the researchers to discuss it in length with the experts from the industry, and then the phenomena which you would like to study or the phenomena for which a machine learning model you would like to establish. So it may be possible for researchers to have a dialogue with the industry person and then identify the set of input associated with the set of input as well as output associated with the problem. Okay, so this is a preamble before starting your research related to experimentation. Your identification of correct input and output associated with the problem is extremely important. If we have this in a scientific way, rest of the things may be very simple, because there are different techniques and methods which are available, which ultimately give you a nod or uh, helpful for you to establish a relationship between input as well as output. So once you have these details, what is the next is, suppose you have 10 inputs and 3 or 4 outputs associated with that. Next important scenario is experimentation, because that is the most rigorous and extremely important scenario. So what we usually do is, we may have an experimentation sheet. So that experimentation sheet does consist with the different columns. For example, your experiment number, or maybe called as serial number. The next is inputs, x1, x2, x3, etc. So suppose you have x15, 15 variables, input variable associated with that particular problem. So I may name it as x1 to x15. Okay. Now, on this side, it has to be output. So suppose you are working on a system wherein it is possible for you to check with 3 different outputs. So y2 as well as y3. These are the 3 outputs for which somebody would like to establish a mathematical relationship or mathematical model. Okay. So this may be called as a specific simple experimentation sheet. Now, next important thing is it okay up till now? I hope it is clear to everybody. This stage is extremely important. That's why I'm asking question. Is it okay up till now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Everybody, everything is okay? Okay, perfectly all right. Now, next important thing is, once I have a set of input and set of output associated with my research problem, how many number of experiments I need to execute? So in an open experimentation process, we usually follow a simple statistical formula, n equals to sigma square multiplied by p into 1 minus p divided by e square. This is the formula which most of the researchers usually utilize to find out the sample size for open experimentation. How many number of experiments I would like to have, how many number of readings I need to have so that it will be statistically valid my mathematical model will be statistically valid and my machine learning model will be statistically valid. Now, in this case, sigma square is actually associated with the corresponding confidence interval, which we usually choose while considering the data collection process. So there are two types of, I really don't want to go into statistics in much more detail because that need again a specific time frame. Generally, researchers usually work on two different types of confidence interval. One is called as 95% confidence interval and next is called as, next is 99% confidence interval. Generally, most of the researchers in the world or even industry, those who are dealing with the research related to machine learning and mathematical modeling, usually rely on the 95% confidence interval. So, as per the 95% confidence interval theory, or maybe area cover under the 95% confidence interval, the sigma value from the standard Z table is 1.96. So you can put this value based on, you can Google it and you will get anywhere. Okay. These are the standard data which are available with any statistics book. Then multiplied by P. So P is the probability while, collecting data or taking a reading, probability with which you are confident whether it will be correct or not. So the most, the conservative way to deal with is the 50% probability. So P for over here must be 0.5. And then we will put it as 1 minus 0.5. Sorry. Divided by, now E, as we are basically dealing with the 95% confidence interval, that means 2.5% error zone on this side. 2.5% error zone on this side with plus and plus minus 3 sigma limit will be there. That means the error which may be part of the process or which is induced into the system will be 5%. So that's why this E is nothing but the error based on 95% confidence interval. So it is 0.05 whole square. If you calculate this, it may be around, if I put it very precisely, 382 or 384 readings. So this is the number which ultimately helped me to have a specific confidence that if I have these many numbers of experiments or readings available with me, the model which I'm going to formulate for whether it is linear model or non-linear model will be statistically significant, because the statistically significant models are extremely important. Without that, it will not be valid and acceptable in the world, whether it is research papers, your research thesis, or anywhere, any report for the government agencies or even for the consultancy. It is not possible. So this is the preamble before going for any experimentation process. Identification of input and output, creation of experimentation sheet, calculation of a sample size, number of experiment, which somebody must have so that it is possible for the researchers to go ahead with the actual mathematical modeling. Now, once it is done, once I have the specific number, then you need to plan the experimentation. You need to plan the experimentation over the specific period of time. For example, if I would like to take readings from the shop floor of an industry, it is meaningless to take readings in a day or maybe in a week or maybe even in a month, because what we need to do is while taking data sets or while taking readings, would like to capture each and every single variation which otherwise may be a part of that variable. Variable is the value of the parameter which is varying from within a specified range. That's why it is called as variable. So practically, when I need to capture that particular variable, for example, X1 is temperature. So if I'm going to consider temperature related to my city, Nagpur, it may vary between say 9 degrees Celsius to whopping 46 degrees Celsius. So if I would like to really capture it, if I'm taking all readings in summer, so it may be within a range of say 41 degrees to 46, which may be a biased one. I know that I have not captured this variable in the proper way. But on the contrary, if I'm going to take it for the complete year, it may be possible for me to get it from 9 degrees Celsius to 46 degrees Celsius. So this is called as a correct capture or maybe called as correct collection of a data. Now, the variable is known to me. It is a generalized terminology. So that's why I can take a decision that yes, temperature need to be taken for over the entire year. But we know that during a new experimentation, when we study actual research problems, the nature of variable, how variable usually behave, the minimum value and maximum value of variable is generally unknown. It's not possible for me to predict it even. So in that case, it is always better to plan experiment evenly within a specific time period. Now, during that time period, with a periodical interval, somebody can collect the data for the experimentation. So obviously, once you have a collected data, it may be look like this. So if it is one sensor data, sensor number 9 is actually the output, and there are eight sensor data. Okay, so this sensor data is actually a signal from to predict the final sensor data. So this sort of spreadsheet somebody will have. Okay, number depending upon the experimentation and depending upon the problem. So for example, this spreadsheet which I will use, this consists with around 499 readings. Okay, so it must be taken over the specific period of time. So this must be the final output as far as experimentation is concerned. Or to code it in a simple way, if I have, this is one of the experimentation which we have done in our Siemens Center of Excellence for fuse deposition modeling based 3D printing process, and we have a Scopus Index paper on this also. So suppose this must be the final output of a experimentation. So wherein this layer thickness, air gap, raster angle, build orientation, road width, number of contours are actually the input. And then tensile strength, build type, and surface roughness are actually called as output. So these are the outputs, tensile strength, which we have already recorded against this parameters. So this is called as the inputs are also available and outputs are also available. So that's why this type of machine learning process or mathematical modeling will be called as supervised learning, wherein you already have a recorded output and you already have a recorded input. So this must be called as experimentation. So for example, we have done it over the year and it's around 324 readings. So it is okay if even within the specific range, it may be possible for me to get the statistically valid result. So once you have this particular experimentation sheet, the next question is, what next? What I need to do? Even with the after spending, because this is the most expensive stage of a research experimentation. Here you need instrumentation, people, industry support, etc., etc., etc. And the time frame which somebody is spending. So if I'm investing a year and spending a lot of money on this to experiment something, next important is what next, what I need to do, what I'm supposed to do with these input values as well as output values. So obviously our interest is to optimize it. Sometimes maybe minimization or maximization. So in case of tensile strength, we would like to maximize it. In terms of build time, we would like to minimize it. In terms of surface roughness, we would like to minimize it. So altogether, what we need to do is, first important thing is, we would like to establish a relationship between output and a set of input. Whether the relationship exists or not. Whether it is really possible for me to predict tensile strength based on these inputs. Whether these inputs are really responsible to predict or to, what to say that, estimate the corresponding output. This is the first question which somebody would like to have. So even if you have thousands of readings like this or more spreadsheets like this, they're meaningless unless and until you put it into a specific type, a specific frame, and the frame of mathematical modeling. So either you may represent the relationship in terms of graphs, or then otherwise it is always better to create a mathematical model. So whether tensile strength will have a linear relationship with all these inputs, or tensile strength will have a non-linear relationship with all these inputs, that is the question which will tankles in the minds of all researchers. So only answer to it is just use techniques, use methods, put it into a mathematical equation, check coefficient of correlation, check coefficient of determination, check MSE mean square error or root mean square error, and then take a decision whether it is having a specific relationship with this or not. So these are the questions which I would like to answer in due course of time. So these are the things which we would like to have. So with a preamble and with a basic understanding that Now we have experimentation sheet available with us. Now I would like to solve my research hypothesis. I would like to put what we say that to discard the null hypothesis. Null hypothesis stands for the inputs and output are same. There is no effect of input on the output, or predictability is not possible. On the contrary, research hypothesis stands for tensile strength will depend on these parameters. How much depend on how it is possible for me to establish a relationship, that is a different thing. So we would like to establish a mathematical model, train machine learning model based on that. Then and then only it is possible for anybody to put with the authority that yes, the experimentation what I have done or whatever the experimentation I have gone through is perfectly all right. I have spent enough money on that, and it is possible for you to get the output related to that. So once we have that experimentation sheet, then we would like to shift on to the machine learning process. So I hope everything is okay up till now. Any question? The workflow or the basic understanding is clear to everybody?
Participants, any doubts, any questions? If you have, in between, you can ask.
I'm asking these questions repeatedly because unless and until somebody is going to understand that how experimentation need to be performed, how data sheets need to be created. Without that, there are different methods. What you need to do is you can use softwares, you can go through the different YouTube videos are there, stepwise how to perform it, etc., etc. But important thing is actual experimentation, and then it's interpretation once you have a mathematical model or machine learning model. That's why I'm asking this question. If you don't have any question, perfectly all right. Is it okay? Shall we move ahead?
Yes, sir.
Okay, no problem. So practically, if we talk about the based on that data sheets or based on that experimentation sheet, now it is a time to establish a relationship between input as well as output. So there are different terminologies associated with the computational neural network. As I rightly said, classification is of a data, nonlinear function approximation. So this is the domain which we will explore in due course of time, maybe in next 1 or 2 hours. So I would like to talk about the function approximation based prediction by using artificial neural network. We'll use different topology, different transfer functions, and different algorithms through which the comparison could be performed. And nonlinear and adaptive control system is another application of a neural network. So in a diversified way, if we talk about where you can use neural network as a machine learning model, or where it is possible for you to effectively use it, these are the different domains which are obviously not constricted or restricted. These are the best possible details which I could fetch from the research papers and from the industry websites. So aerospace, automotive, banking sector, defense sector, electronic sector, financial sector, manufacturing. Sorry, the spelling it has to be RING. Manufacturing. This I have market rate because I'm a mechanical engineer, so that's why it's near and dear to me. That's why I put it in a RAID format. So manufacturing, whether it is process control, product design and analysis, process and machine diagnosis, real-time uh, identification, visual quality inspection, etc., etc. So by using function approximation and neural network, it is possible for the researchers to address variety of problems associated with the manufacturing. Medical domain, we are currently working on the medical domain base. One of my PhD candidates is actually working in this particular domain. So we are going to work on the DICOM based interface. The CT scan file of CT scan file will convert it into 3D, and those 3D file will print on 3D printer and to generate the pre-surgical or pre-operation model for them. So that is our basic aim behind this. So medical segment, then robotics, speech recognition is one of the topmost application of artificial neural network or machine learning. Securities, whether it is market analysis, stock trading, advisory system, etc., etc. These are some high-end applications related to machine learning. Telecommunication, transportation, etc. So now, before going for the actual supervised and unsupervised learning, let me put it a very simple understanding about the mathematical model and its interpretation, so that later during a later stage, once I train the neural network, when we would like to talk about the interpretation, it must be easy for everybody to understand. So suppose I have an experimentation sheet available with me wherein inputs and outputs are there. That means we are working on supervised learning. I'm going to train neural network or mathematical model based on that. So based on that, suppose I'm going to have an equation like this. Output equals to 2.3 plus 0.6 into x1. x1 is your input variable minus 2.3 into x2. So this is a multiple regression model, linear multiple regression model plus 6.2 into x3, etc. So it may be depending upon the different number of input variable, you're going to choose it, or you will get a final mathematical model. So practically, it is possible for me to predict y. Okay. So I already have a y from the experimentation sheet. That y is actually called as y actual or y experimental. Now, the intercept 2.3 or I mean to say the plane regression plane which is cutting on the y-axis by 2.3, 0.6 minus 2.3 and 6.2. These are actually called as the coefficients associated with the mathematical model. This one, and this one. In other words, if I would like to put it in a very broader context, these are called as, this is actually called as a knowledge which is induced into the mathematical model. Why it is a knowledge induced into the mathematical model? Because moment you provide new value of x1 or even existing value of x1, x2 and x3, this mathematical model will give me a prediction. So suppose your actual ya is 20. For example, I'm talking about. And then what we need to do is, I will put those values of x1, x2 and x3, and this equation will give me a computed value. So that must be called as y computed, okay, from the mathematical model. And if it is say around 21.2. So this is the actual value. This is predicted value. We used to talk about predictive analytics. So this is the part of predictive analytics actually. Your mathematical model can predict a specific output value. Okay. Now, I need to check whether the y and input is having a proper relationship or not, whether it is closely associated with or not. Otherwise, from the Excel sheet, it is next to impossible for me to check whether the tensile strength will have a specific relationship with these inputs or not. Okay. So, once I have this relationship, that now from the mathematical equation, suppose 20 is my actual value and mathematically simulated value or mathematically predicted value is 21.2. If it is nearer to this ya, the relationship between these two things are actually called as coefficient of correlation. There is a specific formula for that. You can Google it and you will get it. No need to explain formula over here. So that relationship is actually called as coefficient of correlation. This coefficient of correlation should be towards 1. If it is towards 1, nearer to 1, that means your output and your input is usually have a very strong relationship. In other words, we must say that based on these inputs x1, x2 and x3, it is possible for me to predict output. So the question which we usually have, that after spending time, spending enough amount on or money on this, whether it is possible for me to predict tensile strength based on all these input parameters. So this mathematical model or this R will give me a clear-cut indication. If R is towards 1, that means Y is predictable based on x1, x2, x3. Now, this is such a relief for the researchers or anybody that yes, whatever the amount or the time which I have spent to experiment it, to record data, etc., have fetched better results. That's why this coefficient of correlation is important. And what we have done over here, we have a recorded output already. We have a recorded input already. Based on that, we have created a mathematical model. And that's why this type of learning is called as supervised learning. Is there any question in this section? Because this we will need once we train the neural network. I will ask you questions associated with this. Is there anything which is missing over here you don't understand? Please feel free to ask. We have enough time today because without that, merely attending lecture and not using it may not be useful scenario. We know during STDPs, sometimes it may be for the certificate only. Please don't do it. Even for your regular research, for research paper writing, these fundamentals you can use right away. Directly, you can use this if you know these fundamentals. I hope it is clear to everybody. So one important terminology, if there is no question, coefficient of correlation. Next important thing is the difference between YA and YC is actually called as residual or maybe called as error. Okay. So obviously, when we talk about global optimization or any technique, mathematical modeling technique, the overall error should be zero. Practically, it should be zero. Moment you have a maximum error in this thing, that means the relationship between input and output is not proper. Acceptable value for R is must be more than 0.5. If it is below 0.5, that means it is having a very weak relationship between input as well as output. That means you cannot explain output based on, or your output is not relying on the state of input. This is one important terminology. So if it is nearer to 1, that means it is having a very strong relationship. This is one thing. Next important question, once you have a specific confidence that yes, Y is predictable based on set of input. But I don't think so this much confirmation is sufficient enough for the industry. For industry, what they need, they are basically interested in managing this Y. So for example, if this Y is cycle time of any operation, to increase the productivity of the company, this cycle time need to be reduced down. That means it must be towards minimization. Now, in this minimization, once we have this mathematical model will help me to identify the sensitive variable which somebody could control, so that or would focus on those variables to control the output. So for example, in this case, the maximum coefficient or the main coefficient over here is 6.2. So the most sensitive variable over here is x3. Next important is 2.3. So next sensitive variable is x2. And the last one must be x3. So practically, while working with the experimentation, as a researcher or as an industry, they need to focus on x3 first. If they can manage the values of x3 so that they can minimize y, that will be a great terminology for the industry. So this process is called as identification of sensitive parameter to manage the output. So practically, after mathematical model, this must be the byproduct. Why this must be the byproduct? Because based on this byproduct, it is possible for somebody to provide an authoritative statement again that yes, after a rigorous experimentation, for example, if we go back to our this, to manage tensile strength, if it is possible for me to find out that layer thickness is the most dominant parameter, so that means I can control layer thickness to increase the overall tensile strength. Or for a build time, if we consider that the road width or shell thickness or number of contours are going to play an important role, that means I will put a focus on road width so that the overall build time need to be reduced down. So that must be the final output as far as research is concerned. And that must be the final, I must say, a tangible output of the mathematical model. I again hope it is clear to everybody. Is there any question up till now?
No, sir. Friends, feel free to ask any doubts.
No, sir.
No.
So I hope everything is going in a perfect way. Let's hope so. Even if you have a question, please note it down. At the end of the session, we will address each and every single thing. So practically, we would like to have this particular confidence by using artificial neural network, or maybe even by using a mathematical modeling. Okay, so it may be a linear model or maybe a non-linear model. Now coming back to the same process of artificial neural network or structure of artificial neural network. So we know the biological process, and from the surrounding through dendrites, the information could be transferred to the center, an action potential due to excitement of the action potential, that information then transferred to the next neuron. The same process we would like to transfer into the artificial neuron. So what we usually do in artificial neuron is, first of all, let me explain this by using this method only. Suppose this is a biological neuron and this is the center. We have structure like this. This may be the axon, which is then attached to another neuron to transfer the information. So from the surrounding, what we usually have is, now we'll consider this associated with the experimentation sheet. So from the surrounding, suppose we have variables x1, x2, which is the information associated with the experimentation, x3 up to xn. This information through these dendrites, or maybe called as synapses. These are called as the synapses. So it does consist with, say, W1, W2 synapses, or maybe called as synaptic weights in terms of mathematical calculation. W3 up to Wn. This many number of synapses will be there. So this complete information we would like to transfer to the center so that center can take a specific decision. Okay, will give a specific output. So how we can transfer the information? X1 W1 plus X2 W2 plus X3 W3 and so on up to Xn Wn. This complete information, which must be summation of, practical summation of Xi Wi or Xn Wn. All input multiplied by the synaptic weight. This information can be transferred to the center, wherein center usually have a non-linear transfer function. So this used to have a specific transfer function. This information can be transferred to the transfer function, and the transfer function can give you the final output. So this is the generalized way of I mean to say, based on the biological neuron stage, we may have, represented that how the information from the surrounding through synaptic weights can be transferred to the transfer function, and transfer function can fetch output for me. So the same, this output could be then utilized for the next neuron, and accordingly this information may process further, or unless and until decision is there. Just a moment, please. So the same process, what we can do is, now it is possible for me to transfer the same, or depict the same one by using a simple mathematical artificial neuron. So I will create an artificial neuron now. So creation of an artificial neuron does consist with one input line, hidden layer, and then the output layer. Okay. So input layer is nothing but your x1, x2, x3, x4 up to xn. And then, so this is basically called as input layer. This is called as hidden layer. We are talking about shallow network, or it's not a deep learning network, shallow network for function approximation. And this is called as output layer. So now in input, I will have x1, x2, x3 up to xn. Okay, so it must be x1, x2, x3 inputs up to xn, whatever may be the corresponding number of inputs which you are using. And on output side, as we are basically training it, or we'd like to train it from the same Excel sheet, tensile strength, build time, and surface roughness. 3 outputs are there. So there are different options available. Either you can train it for a single output. So initially, I would like to train it for single output. So this will be Y experimentation, YE I must say, or Y actual. This is the value which I have. Now I would like to insert the neurons, unobservable nodes, or maybe called as neurons. So now I'm going to insert the neurons in hidden layer. Neuron 1, unobservable node 1, and unobservable node 2. We'll talk about this, how many number of neurons, or how many number of nodes must be there, etc., etc. We'll talk about it in the later stage. Just create a basic network, and then we'll talk about it. So what we usually need to do is, we need to transfer this information, this input layer information, through some media to the neuron. So as far as our previous depiction is concerned, what we need to do, I need to have a connection from this particular input layer to this neuron. And these connections are basically through synapses. So as I have connection like this, the same way I will have connection with second neuron. Okay. Now, if we talk about the information which we are providing from this particular thing to this neuron, so it has to be through a synaptic bit. So suppose this is W1, this is W2, and this is W3. We're talking about single one. Okay, three inputs transferring to the single neuron. So this information now would like to transfer at the this neuron, which will have a non-linear transfer function to process it so that we can detect the specific output. So how we can transfer it? It is mathematically x1 w1 plus x2 w2 plus x3 w3. So it is actually summation of xi wi input multiplied by synaptic bits, synapses. Now this complete information can be transferred to the non-linear transfer function. Now there are two types of non-linear transfer function which we usually utilize in artificial neural network. One is log-sig function, and this log-sig function is nothing but the sigmoidal function. Log-sig, or maybe called as sigmoidal function. So this function is actually 1 divided by 1 plus e to the power minus x, which map the value or squeeze the value of this entire summation of xi wi between 0 to 1. Whatever the corresponding value is, it will map it between 0 to 1. So this is called as sigmoidal function or log-sig function. Next transfer function which we usually utilize in function approximation method is called as tanh-sig or hyperbolic tangential function. Tanh-sig or hyperbolic tangential function, and it is actually e to the power x minus e to the power minus x divided by e to the power x plus e to the power minus x. This is the structure of a mathematical structure of a hyperbolic tangential function, and it will map the value between -1 to 1. Squeeze whatever the corresponding value is, it will squeeze it between -1 to 1. So these are the transfer function which we can utilize in the neuron. Okay. So for example, if I have a log-sig, this is actually, we need to select it that at input level, maybe at hidden layer as well as at output layer, which type of transfer function you would like to have, because this is a dynamic terminology and it will have the significant impact on the output also. If I'm going to change the transfer function, if I'm going to change the number of neurons or even optimization algorithm. So we'll talk about it in a again due course of time. So suppose this is I am using. So for example, XIWI is what? This XIWI is your X value. So this XIWI can be put into this formula and which will give me a result between 0 to 1. So it is possible for me to get the output from this one. Like for example, I'm getting 0.68. So 0.68 is between 0 to 1. So this is the output from the sigmoidal function. Similarly, from this console, there must be a separate hidden layer nonlinear transfer function sigmoidal, and if it is going to give me 0.96. So this 0.68 and 0.96 now will be act as an input for the output layer. Okay. Now, what we usually have is, then we need to have another synaptic weights W21 and W22. So practically 0.68 into W21 and plus 0.96 into W22 will be the complete signal at the output layer. Again, summation of XIWI. Then again, you will have either linear pure link function or non-linear transfer function at the output layer. And from this console, after processing it, you will get the final answer. Final prediction. Suppose final prediction is, if again you are using log-sig over here, so it may be, for example, 0.92. So 0.92 is actually the value or final output from the neural network after training the neural network. What I need to do is I need to compare this with the YE. But the problem is my YE is in the range of say 20. But in case of a final output from the neural network, it will be between 0 to 1. So actually what we usually do is we have scaled inputs. This entire thing we used to scale during pre-processing either between 0 to 1 or maybe between -1 to 1. So as we usually scale it at this particular level, this can be descaled and then it can be converted into a computed value. So suppose computed value I'm going to get from this one is 20.6. Okay. We'll talk about scaling and descaling during the actual execution in the MATLAB. Okay. So you don't need to worry on that front also. So what we need to do is again comparison between YE and YC. If they are nearer to each other, then the coefficient of correlation will be nearer to 1. If it is nearer to 1, that means this neural network have a predictability to predict output based on this input. So this is called as function approximation method based neural network, wherein your traditional or maybe called as a biological neuron can be converted into a specific mathematical neuron. यहाँ तक किसी को कुछ doubt होगा, if there is any doubt, please tell me, or otherwise we'll move ahead and then see. This is a preamble and basics related to neural network. I will go into much more details. I mean, one by one complexity associated with the neural network. Is there any question up till now?
No, sir.
Asking question is again my it is my duty, and it ultimately give me a small 2, 3, 5 seconds rest period so that if somebody would like to ask question, I can take a pause. Is it clear to everybody? Is there any question? Shall I presume that if nobody is asking anything, that means everything is okay? We are going in correct direction. Is it so?
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So if you have R on a higher side, that means the neural network is fitted well. That means Y is predictable based on the set of input which we have. A neural network have, through a function approximation, have a predictability to establish a relationship between input as well as output. This is one thing. Next important thing is the relationship between, or sorry, the difference between Y and YC is called as error or residuals. That error need to be 0. So what usually happen is, just a moment, please. So suppose we have experiments from say 1 to 380. So obviously I will have actual value YA for all 380 elements. And then from neural network, I will have computed value for all 380. And then the difference between that is called as error. So I will have an error E1 to E380. So what we usually do is we used to take a summation of this, okay? Summation of EI, that means all error, and then we used to square it and then take a mean of this. Mean means in this case it has to be 1 by 380. So all errors will be squared. That's why it is called as, and then divided by 1 by n is called as MSE, mean square error. And mean square error is the main performance function of a neural network. For example, with different topology, with different neuron, with different transfer function, as well as with different optimization algorithm, when I need to find out that which one is the best one, which topology is going to give me better results or best results, in that case, this mean square error is extremely important. So what we need to do is this mean square error need to be towards 0. It must be 0. And R should be towards 1. So while getting the final result, this will be helpful during, maybe helpful for anybody during while writing the research papers also, because we usually provide a comparison. I will show you few research papers from elsewhere, and will tell you that how we can present it. At the end, once we train everything, I will show you that result also. So that's why the main performance function in the artificial neural network is MSE, function approximation based neural network, is mean square error, and it should be 0. If mean square error is towards 0, that means neural network is trained in a proper way. Once it is done, clear to everybody. Now let's talk about other factors associated with the neural network now. We have input layer, hidden layer, and output layer. So that's why this network is called as multi-layered network. This is one thing. Okay. The structure of transferring input to the neuron, and this particular structure is basically called as a perceptron. I will give you a demonstration of this also. Perceptron. Okay. So this is multi-layer perceptron. What we usually do is we used to transfer information from input layer to hidden layer, and from hidden layer to output layer. Predictability is actually the information flow is actually from this to this and from this to this. So that's why this is called as multi-layer feed forward perceptron or multi-layer feed forward neural network. Now, what usually happen is once we train neural network with a single iteration, it may be possible that it is not possible for me to fetch R in a best way, or MSE is on a higher side. So what we usually do is we like to train the neural network again, retrain the neural network. And for that particular purpose, the error need to be back propagated so that algorithm can take a decision regarding retraining of a neural network. Okay, so error get back propagated. So that's why the network is called as multi-layer feed forward back propagation neural network. That's why while reading the books or maybe from the research papers, you may come across with the terminologies like this, that it is a multi-layer perceptron or multi-layer feed forward back propagation neural network, etc., etc. So this is how the terminology need to be finalized. That's why it is called as multi-layer perceptron or multi-layer feed forward neural network. Next important thing associated with this is, suppose in input layer there are 3 inputs. So I may write it as 3 dash. Then in hidden layer you have 2 neurons. So I will write it as 2 dash. Then at output layer, suppose we are training it against 1 output, then it is dash 1. So this 3 to 1 is called as topology of a neural network. This 3 to 1 is actually called as topology of a neural network. So practically, as I already told you, that when we talk about this topology and effectiveness, the overall results or dynamicness of a neural network will depend on topology also. The moment I change number of neurons in input layer, it may be possible that the overall results may change. If we talk about the overall, may not be related to the output, but if I'm going to change the number of neurons, then the overall results may change. So that is basically called as a corresponding topology. So while creating the experimentation sheet or while presenting the fundamentals of neural network, what we usually do is we used to have a different topology. Moment you change topology of a neural network, it may be possible that the results may change. So it has to be a lot of permutation and combination associated with the neural network to find out the best results. So this is the basic structure of multi-layer feed forward neural network. Is there any question till now? Okay, perfectly all right. Just a moment, please. Just give me a single minute. Okay, so let me resume the show. So this is the preamble that how artificial neural network somebody can create. I will talk about the theoretical aspects of this, and then we'll shift on to the MATLAB with MATLAB and SPSS for some case studies and its corresponding interpretation. So we already had a discussion about the supervised learning. So let me explain this in a very simple way. If this big fellow would like to teach this small fellow that who is enemy and who is friend from these figures. So this is a line of enemy and this is a line of friends. As per the thumb rule, this big fellow need to teach this small fellow that whenever somebody is approaching you, you need to check an enemy is an animal with sharp teeth larger than 20 centimeter and that barks. Okay. Or the small friend is smaller than 20 centimeter, larger than 20 centimeter with feathers, etc. etc. Does it mean that when this creature is approaching this small fellow, he's going to have a tape or it is going to have a tape and just identify, no, no, wait, let me have measure it and then I will put a tagline this your friend or your enemy. I don't think so. Thumb rule will play an important role over here. Same is actually with the machine learning. In case of supervised learning, it is always better that this big fellow based on experience and based on all inputs and outputs can train this small fellow that this category belongs to enemy and this category belongs to the friend. That means if you have for teaching, if you have input and output both, and then if it is possible for us to establish a relationship between input and output, that type of learning or that type of neural network or machine learning is called as supervised learning. So when you have input vectors and output vectors associated or available with you, then you would like to train the network is called as supervised learning. So this is what is the same scenario, the same depiction for the supervised learning. And in case of unsupervised learning, if I would like to categorize this in this one category is for enemy and zero category for the friend. So if I can train the neural network so that there may be a tagging of say 0 and 1 and accordingly classification could be performed. Again, based on input as well as output is called as again supervised learning. And what is the basic difference between unsupervised learning? Unsupervised learning is you don't have output available with you. It will be only input. And based on that input, if neural network is going to train or we need to train the neural network and take some decision, then that is called as unsupervised learning. These are some additional details associated with the neural network. I don't think so. If you are new to the neural network or machine learning, action potential and other things are right now important for us. So let me skip this one also. No need to deal with that. This is the same mathematical creation or mathematical model, which I have already just explained, that from surrounding different input with synaptic weights can be transferred to the neuron. And this neuron does consist with the non-linear transfer function. And this non-linear transfer function can give you output. That output then can be act as a input to the next neuron. So this is how your biological process or neuron can be transferred or transformed into the actual mathematical neuron. So input, neurons, and the corresponding output, the same depiction over here also. The repetition will be there for the sake of understanding only. And this is the mathematical formulation which we have. The complete signal R is nothing but the synaptic weights multiplied by input plus biased. Biased or called as threshold. Every system usually have inertia. And looking at that, we need to provide the bias value also. So that's why the B will be added over here. Now, the simple neuron, this again, same repetition. input P1, P2, P3 up to Pn through synapses W1, W2, W3 up to Wn will be summation of P1 W1 transfer to the transfer function or maybe to the neuron, and it is possible for us to predict the output from this particular console. So this is the basic structure of a neuron. Let me skip this, not important. Okay. Now, next important thing is the transfer function, the nature of a transfer function. So as I rightly said, we usually focus on two different types of transfer function. Generally, one is called as sigmoidal function or called as logistic function. So this is the logistic function, and this logistic function will map value between 0, if you can follow the cursor, 0 to 1. And the overall formulation for that is 1 divided by 1 plus e to the power minus x. Okay, this x is e to the power minus x stands for summation of xi wi, input multiplied by synapses or synaptic rate. So that's why the formulation is 1 divided by 1 plus e to the power minus x, which will map the value between 0 to 1. Any value between 0 to 1. I will tell you the significance of that also, why it need to be mapped between 0 to 1. Okay. So this is a perceptron neural network. We already had a discussion about it, that the input through synapses can be transferred to the neuron. So this is called as a perceptron layer or in hidden layer associated with the neural network. Now we had a discussion about the multi-layered neural network. The multi-layer stands for once you have input layer, hidden layer and output layer, that is called as multi-layer neural network. So input and then specific hidden layer and then output layer is called as multi-layer neuron or multi-layer neural network. And this is architecture of a feed forward back propagation neural network. Feed forward because information usually transfer from input to hidden layer and from hidden layer to output. That's why it is called as feed forward. Back propagation, if I'm not happy with the overall performance of a neural network need to be retrained, and for retraining, error gets back propagated to take a specific decision. A decision usually taken by the optimization algorithm regarding retraining of a neural network. That is called as back propagation of a neural network. Let me skip this also, it's not important. Okay, so all together, the transfer function, which usually play an extremely important role while training the neural networks, are one is, again let me repeat it, sigmoidal function 1 divided by 1 plus e to the power minus x, hyperbolic tangential function e to the power x minus e to the power minus x divided by e to the power x plus e to the power minus x. So logistic or sigmoidal function will map value between 0 to 1. Hyperbolic tangential function will map value between -1 to 1. So these are the two transfer functions which we predominantly utilize. So this is how the depiction. This is a pure lin function, which is a linear output will. There's a linear transfer will be there. This logistic function, which will map between 0 to 1, and this is tansic function, which will map the value between -1 to 1. Now the question is why we really need to map or scale the value between 0 to 1 or -1 to 1. Can anybody please tell me that why we need, can you please, based on the mathematical formulation, now we know the formula available with us, 1 divided by 1 plus e to the power minus x. Can you please tell me why it is really important to map it between 0 to 1 or -1 to 1? Any specific reason that why we usually scale down the values, original values into a scale terminology? Still waiting for the answer. I need this answer. This is a very basic one. Question is why we usually squeeze it between 0 to 1 or -1 to 1. Just check the formula and please tell me that why we need it.
If the output is only positive.
No, it's not important that we need to have output in a positive way only. There is some other reason for that. Think about it and tell me. Because see, even if we transfer the input, overall signal which we are transferring to the neuron is what? Input multiplied by synaptic weights. Okay. Synaptic weights are the random numbers, which usually between again -1 to 1. So altogether, I don't think so positive or negative input or output is going to play an important role over here. Anything else? See, one-side delivery is meaningless unless and until I have an interaction, and if you don't know, because most probably during the
Sir, there is one
to
chat.
be able to make decisions assertive. I'm sorry, come again, sir. Assertive stands for on what basis we'll take a decision in assertive mode? Just check the mathematical expression for a transfer function. So very simple one. If we are working with the engineering process from right from your 11th, 12th standard, we used to talk about mathematics and engineering.
For applying numerical integration techniques like Gauss-Legendre quadrature.
Sorry, sir. Can you please come again?
Numerical integration technique. For that, normally we use Gauss-Legendre method, quadrature method.
We are not using numerical integration over here, sir. It's actually related to the dimensionality, not related to
normalization.
Normalization. The question is why we use normalization. Why it is important?
To make it dimensional independent.
Dimensional?
To make it independent on dimension.
How it is possible for me to make it independent of dimension, and how it is going to impact on the overall neural network? This is what is the question which I'm asking.
Sir, because the probability is from 0 to 1.
Sorry?
Of any decision. Probability of making any decision.
No, I'm really sorry.
Is from 0 to 1.
It's not related to probability again. No. Anything else, please? Okay. With your consent, let me take it in a very simple way. Yeah. What usually happens is we're talking about providing input to the neural network. Let's just imagine the input x1 is within a range of say 10 to 45. This is the range of an input variable. Now it may be possible that x2 may be ranging between 1000 to 5000, depending on variable again. And suppose x3 is between 0.5 to say 2.5. Your x4 may be within a range of say 250 to 700. I'm talking about just assumption. What is the problem with this? So a lot of variation is there as far as input details is concerned. But these are the practical variations which you cannot do anything. What usually happen is, suppose x1 is 45, and then your random number or maybe synaptic weight is something 0.65. And then on this side, suppose it is 5000, again synaptic weight something say 0.91 or something like this. Similarly on this side 2.5 multiplied by something. So altogether 0.65 into 45, 5000 into 0.91, 2.5 into some random number, and 250 into some random number. That is actually summation of xi w. Suppose this value is in say 272 points something. What usually happen is when you transfer it to the transfer function, 1 divided by 1 plus e to the power minus x. Moment I put 272.2, 1 divided by 1 plus e to the power minus 272.2, what will happen? What practically will happen?
will increase exponentially.
That means it is, if the value gets saturated like anything, saturated in terms of what? It will be now 0.000000 something and some number. So for mathematical computation, this saturated value is meaningless for me. Moment we talk about e to the power -3 above this, the value gets saturated. So practically, if I'm getting 0.00000 something, and then again for next layer multiplying with the synaptic weights, what will happen? Again, it will get saturated. It is next to impossible for me to have a predictability by using neural network. It is next to impossible for a neural network to find the optimal condition, because it will be far, far, far away from the actual optimal value. Because of this formula, it gets saturated. So that's why what we usually do is, we used to scale the input. We already have a synapses which is within the specific range of 0 to 1 or -1 to 1. So that way, moment we use a transfer function and this scale value, it will be always between this 0 to 1 or -1 to 1. This is the reason of pre-processing of or scaling of the data. I hope it is clear to everybody.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So practically, to reduce down the computation time as well as the computation cost, it has to be within a specified range, and that's why we usually squeeze it. So this is just a representation of the transfer function. Let us give this also. So threshold is actually the inertia of a system, and we need to provide that actual practical inertia into the system. So that's why we usually use threshold or bias added to the network during the computation. Now this slide is extremely important. When we used to talk about training the neural network or function approximation method, there are three different terminologies associated with that: training, testing, and validation. Okay, so practically in an Excel sheet, if we have 400 readings altogether, what we need to do, we need to provide information to the neural network so that neural network can train itself and trying to find out the underlying relationship between input and output. That is the basic purpose. So obviously training need to be strong. It has to be in a proper way. So that's why from 400 reading, the by default value or the number of readings which we usually transfer for the training will be 70% data. So around 280 readings need to be transferred for the training. Once it is transferred the data, neural network will have a calculation, optimization algorithm will run, and accordingly some output will be there in terms of MSA as well as R. Now, once it is done, neural network already have a specific base regarding predictability or possibility of prediction of Y based on set of input. Then next is, I need to check the effectiveness of neural network. So next 15% data, which I have hold out data from the complete 400 readings, then can be transferred for testing. So whatever the neural network means, effectiveness of a training that need to be checked based on that 15% data. That means total 85% data could be used while training and testing of a neural network. Then I need a unbiased results. And for that things, when neural network train itself, I usually provide this 15% data, which is not known to the neural network. This is a new data to the neural network. And then this is called as a validation data. So based on that validation, after validation, then we will come up with the specific, what we say that output. Yes, the neural network is trained properly. So that way, the complete reading or sample usually divided into three different sections: training, testing, and validation. Most important question is, while answering this, training, testing, and uh, validation related, how we are going to divide the data sets. Main functionality or effectiveness of neural network actually lies with the randomness. If it is random enough, that means you cannot select it. For example, if you have a best results from experiment number 1 to say 200, it may be possible for the researcher that they can transfer that much data for the training. This should not happen. So that's why there are different methods of the data division. By default, data division should be random. So I suggest every researchers, if anybody is working on this particular domain, that please put whether it is a MATLAB code or your SPSS or Python or everywhere. If you are solving function approximation problem, data division should be random, and it is by default in MATLAB or in most of the softwares. This is by default random division. You can have data into a contiguous blocks. You can divide it by using interleave selections. You can divide data by specific indexing also. But I usually, during the research process or while guiding research scholars or delivering lectures, always suggest division of data should be random. So, as I rightly said, the performance function in neural network is error. MSE, mean square error. So, difference between experimental value or actual value and predicted value is actually called as error. So, this is called as the difference between actual value and predicted value. Okay. We need to square it. So, this will be called as squaring of an error. Take a mean, and that is called as mean square error. If you take under root of that, it is called as root mean square error. But generally, while training the neural network, we usually use MSE, mean square error, as a main performance function. So this is how we need to get while training the neural network. Main performance function is MSE. So 1 divided by n, actual value minus predicted value, squaring it. This way you can calculate the mean square error. Let me skip this gradient. We are not going to calculate right now. So backpropagation, we already had a discussion that when for retraining of a neural network, or if I'm not getting the proper results, the errors need to be backpropagated. Then that type of neuron is actually called as feed-forward backpropagation neural network. I'm really sorry if you slides I'm skipping, because right now we're not going into mathematical terminology. We are more interested in interpretation of a neural network. So next important thing is, once we have a topology, once we have a transfer function, once we have a structure of a neural network, most important terminology is your training algorithm. Training algorithm is actually responsible for generation of a synapses. Because if you can observe one thing in the entire mathematical calculation, one thing which is only dynamic is synapses or synaptic weights. W1, W2 are called as synaptic weights. You cannot change your input, you cannot change your output. So only thing which you can change for trial and error method to fetch best result from the neural network will be synapses or synaptic weight. Okay. So there are different training algorithms such as batch gradient descent method, gradient descent with momentum, scale conjugate gradient method, then Leeuwenberg-Marquardt method, etc., etc. There are around 12 algorithms which somebody can have to train the corresponding neural network. So let me show you. I will show you the name of different algorithms also. This pre-processing and post-processing of our data, we just had a discussion that why we need pre-processing. Pre-processing is required so that complete input can be transferred into either -1 to 1 or 0 to 1. So the function for that is pre-min-max. So pre-min-max is having a specific formula. Based on that, it used to normalize the data within the range of -1 to 1. And similarly, as we have scaled input, then after calculation at the end, we need to have a inverse of that pre-min-max, and that is called as post-min-max, so that we can compare the actual output. Output is 20, and if you are getting output in 0.68, that is meaningless. So that's why exact reverse of pre-min-max will be post-min-max. Similarly, there are different methods with which you can have a pre-processing of a data. Okay, for example, maybe normalized data to have zero mean or unity standard deviation, or maybe inverse of that is called as again reverse of this one. Pre-process new data of network that will train with the data normalized with this one. So there are different methods with which pre-processing and post-processing need to be done. But generally, in by default terminology, we use this one, pre-min-max and post-min-max. okay, which will usually map the value between. That means, first of all, it will normalize it within a specified range, and with the reverse formula, it can again inverse it. So, in a nutshell, if I really wish to put it into an algorithm form, the complete flowchart form, the artificial neural network, how we usually do, we used to generate the random numbers or random weights. That means synaptic weights will be generated randomly, multiplied by your input data, input matrix. And this summation of xi wi can be transferred to the hidden neuron. This hidden neuron will have a transfer function. So here, if you can see, hi equals to 1 divided by 1 plus e to the power minus x. That means this is sigmoidal transfer function. Okay. Once this is done, calculate the output at the output neuron. That means the output from this hidden neuron can be act as the input to the output neuron, multiplied by the synapses, and then again at output neuron you can calculate it. Okay, there must be a transfer function at output neuron. Then from this console you will get the final output. What you need to do is you need to compare it with the actual one, actual output with the desired output. Then based on this we'll calculate the output error. If error is towards 0, network is okay, prediction is okay. If you are not happy with the error, then again what we need to do is we need to alter the synaptic weights. And for that things, what we usually do is we used to calculate the error gradient. Error gradient could be calculated, and then output synaptic synapses can be transformed or can be changed. Similarly, local error gradient can be calculated for the hidden layer, and hidden weights can be transformed. And this process is continuous unless and until we come up or fetch the best possible results. So that's why retraining of neural network is important. We need to retrain neural network multiple times unless and until we get better R and minimum MSE. So this is the overall scenario, overall structure through which we can we usually utilize in artificial neural network. Now, generalization with early stopping. So we usually during a academic problem, there is no need for the early stopping. We used to have a specific details associated with that. So we usually have a complete data set divided into training set, validation set, and testing set. Okay. This is the next part of the lecture. So this is up to the theoretical aspects associated with the neural network. Now we would like to transfer to the MATLAB and SPSS for the actual demonstration of a neural network. But before that, if you have any question, please ask me. Anything related to the theoretical aspects, if you have anything, please. Any question, please?
Participants, are you having any queries?
Mr. Durgesh Sharma.
No. I think.
Mr. Durgesh Sharma, are you there? Mr. Gaurav Shukla.
I found his name. Yeah, Gaurav Shukla. Yes, sir.
Mr. Gaurav Shukla,
Yes, sir. He's
can you hear me, please?
1 minute. Gaurav Shukla has muted his mic, sir.
Mr. Gaurav Shukla. I'm randomly asking it because I wanted to check it whether the concept has been transferred or people are there or not.
No, those who want means actually yesterday also some participants have asked regarding to their data. They are having some data of experiments and what to do with this data.
Okay.
whether we have to go with ANN or fitting curve, that, some kind of questions were asked yesterday. And
Okay,
today's your expert talk will be very helpful for them. So when you will show the ANN this tool in the next session, I hope it will help them. So those who are really interested, they are listening, sir.
okay, perfectly all right. No, I'm just randomly asking it whether, I mean, it is okay, the entire workflow, if they know this entire workflow, so it may be possible for them to understand the practical application, because
Okay.
moment I shift on to MATLAB as well as SPSS, we'll
Yeah.
train neural network, set the neural network, and then we'll talk about the actual practical implementation of that, or maybe called as interpretation. So if they know this background, then and then only somebody can understand that. That's it. That's why I'm asking, nothing else.
Yeah, yeah.
So I hope everything is okay. So is it possible for us to take a 10-minute break and we'll resume at 2:30 exactly?
No issue, sir, as you wish.
So I request everybody to please, this may be a breathing period for me also. And then we'll please take a 10-minute break. And right now it is 2:17, I hope. Is it, sir?
Yes, sir, yes, sir. It's
So we'll resume exactly at 2:20 then.
sure. Sir.
Sorry, 2:30. 2:30.
Okay, sir.
Okay, yeah. We'll keep it as it is. I will just